Renfroe, and welcome to Thoughtful Thursday. I'm excited today to have my guest, Dr. Stephanie C Holmes, on with me, and just what she's going to share with us. She is a life coach and certified autism specialist. Um, has working with marriages and families impacted with autism. She was had worked as a former licensed professional counselor, and now she works with families that are impacted with autism. And she just has a lot to share about that to cover. I know it's kind of new to me. I do know some families that have children with autism, but I don't know much about it personally. So I'm excited about it. Stephanie, and just welcome today to my show. How
Thank
are
you
you
for
doing?
having me. I'm doing great. Good to be here.
Good, good. Yeah, I'm excited. So if you could just go ahead and kind of and introduce yourself a bit more and about your family or where you want to start and go from there.
All right, great. Well, usually my little story is I met my husband at church. We met as children. We are childhood sweethearts. We have been together ever since I was 16 and he was 18.
Oh,
So
okay.
about to celebrate 30 years. So we're excited about
Wow.
that. Um,
Great.
I was always planning to be a licensed professional counselor. Or once I was out of school, I became an LPC. I wanted to be a lawyer, but God had other plans for me. He wanted me to be a licensed professional counselor. I was kind of minding my own business,
Yeah.
starting my
Yeah.
practice, doing the things that you do. And my oldest child, Sydney, was really starting to struggle. She was struggling in the church classroom. She was struggling in school. She was in a really small Christian school of only like 3 to 5 kids in a class, but that was a struggle for her.
Yeah.
And this word kept coming to my mind, Asperger's, which was a word we used to use in autism, Asperger's. I was like, I wonder if this is this Asperger thing that I was never supposed to see that was so rare. And through a couple of years, 20 years ago, professionals, clinicians, doctors didn't think that girls were on the autism spectrum. They really saw it primarily as a male dominated thing. And so after many specialists got involved, she was diagnosed with what used to be called Asperger syndrome, is now called Autism Spectrum Level 1. And so she needed a lot of support. We did homeschool, private school, public school. We tried all the things to get her the support that she needed. And just throughout that journey, so many other people were in the same spot that I was, and especially sometimes people of faith struggle with labels and diagnoses and not understanding them. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of been my mission. I kind of see myself as a missionary to the
Okay.
church to
Yeah.
understand autism that are impacted by autism.
Oh, wow. You felt it was something that was really needed in that space. Yeah. Because when we can better understand something, then we can better help. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, good.
Sometimes autism comes with behavior challenges. And so that can look like, especially in a church community, that this child isn't disciplined, they're not well behaved, they're being naughty. But there are things that are going on neurologically in
Mhm,
them that are difficult. And so instead of trying
mhm,
to punish those behaviors or, discipline the autism out of the child, we
mm,
learned to help the child learn the skills that the child needs, but also grow in patience and grace with some of
mhm.
those behaviors.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can totally, see that. Yeah. Okay. Wow. So, when did you really get into working as the life coach with the autism? Then how
So
long?
that was pretty recent. So I tried to maintain being a licensed professional counselor. We are originally from the state of North Carolina, that's where our family is. And we lived in a really rural county, and we were not getting the support that we needed for our daughter. So we made the move to Atlanta. Moving from one state to another state, sometimes there can be issues with licenses. And I was kind of seeing a shift in society about how marriage and family is defined, and
Mhm,
decided I
mhm,
didn't want to get a license because when you are
mm.
licensed in a state and if they allow certain things, in marriage and partnership, you have to counsel in that direction. So I decided not to continue as a licensed professional counselor. I actually became an ordained minister and started doing some pastoral counseling. And
Mm-hmm.
then the need just became so great for
Yeah.
marriages and families that have
Yeah.
a family member or two or
Yeah.
three on the
Okay.
autism spectrum. I shifted completely
Oh,
to life
yeah.
coaching.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's good. And so how does that kind of look like with how you help
So
family?
with counseling, there's a kind of more therapy involved and people's backstory and talking through, problems and traumas and things of that nature. With life coaching, it's a little more what we call reality based or solution based or problem focused based, where like what's going on, let's kind of understand what's happening, and then let's set some solutions and goals and create those steps to meet those goals. So I have, sometimes worked with, I don't no longer work with children because I do everything by Zoom. I used to have an office and I can get down on the
Oh,
floor with
okay.
them and do all of that, but I can't do
Oh,
that
okay.
anymore. So I work
Okay.
with teens, young adults, but also what we have found is my husband and I are also autism researchers,
Mm.
and there are many, many adults getting diagnosed later in life. So my
Mm.
husband would be diagnosed in 2019 on the
Mm.
autism spectrum. And so that's created a new type of
Mm.
couple called a neurodiverse couple. And that's when one or
Oh,
more
okay.
people are on the autism
Yeah.
spectrum. So we
Oh,
became autism marriage and an autism family. And we just started
great.
hearing from all over the world that people needed help navigating their
Oh,
marriage and family.
wow. Oh, wow. And then you have some experience in that. And so you're able to kind of help them to navigate that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Isn't that something? That's amazing. And then as a mother then of that, so you kind of help the parents know what is what do you call it, like normal with that setting, how to react with it with the children and just
Yeah. So I might do, so I created, because one thing I know that when you have a family with young kids, you don't really have a lot of time to go to conferences and read a lot of books. So
yeah,
I put together some resources and some online classes. Kind of 20 years ago, there was not a me out there helping people navigate this,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah,
decided to be the person I wish I had when
yeah,
20 years ago when we started this. So
yeah.
we our family wrote a book about our experience and our faith journey. We put together some streaming courses, and then sometimes the way it works, because people with young children are busy, they might purchase a
Mhm,
course or watch the material and then set up a time one-on-one to consult with me. We can kind of talk through the material. We can talk
mhm,
about a strategy or like what's happening with school, homeschool, private school, whatever a person is doing. And so I'm kind of more of like a consult if I'm working with
mhm,
parents of a child, because there's usually multiple people on the team. There could be educators, doctors, therapists, counselors, lots of providers, and I'm just kind of a member of that team. What I do most now is working with marriages. So
mhm,
even if both partners are neurotypical, meaning neither one of them are on the spectrum, and you have an autistic child, that's going to be a different marriage dynamic for you. And then if you are a neurodiverse couple where one of you is also on the autism spectrum, that's a different kind of family system that we're working in. So it's
mhm,
a very, very small niche, but that's really all
mhm,
I do is autism.
mhm,
Day in, day
mhm.
out is autism.
Oh, wow. And you do most of that from your home like that? Just meetings
Yes, so
like
I
that?
used to have I used to have an office at my church, and then
Yeah.
COVID kinda changed things, so
Oh,
even
okay.
when
Yeah.
I had people I'm here in Atlanta, and, once people we started going to Zoom, they're like, "I don't wanna drive in Atlanta traffic to come to your
Yeah.
office." It was working
Yeah.
fine with Zoom. So I just
Yeah.
kinda shifted
Okay.
everything,
Oh,
to
wow.
Zoom and online.
Wow. Well, that's neat. That should be yeah, really helpful for you and your clients, the ones you work with.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
especially, my clients on the spectrum, they are more comfortable in their natural
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So being at home with all their comfortable things is
Yeah.
usually beneficial for them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and you were saying so having the support didn't used to be so many years ago, you feel? So is it because like autism itself is a newer thing in so many years? I don't know how to explain, but like So, like for you, when your daughter was younger, you did not have as much support and
Yeah, so really our understanding of autism has changed. Most
okay.
people, when they think autism, there was a movie back in the 80s called Rain Man. And I know that was my very first introduction into
Okay.
what autism is.
Yeah.
There is another movie that, although autism is not mentioned in the movie, Forrest Gump, it is
Mhm.
likely that he is portraying
Oh,
someone
okay. Yeah.
who is on the autism spectrum. And so, really, most of us, if you don't have any clinical background or training, that's kind of what you think. You think Rain Man or Forrest Gump kind of behavior. But back before 2000, clinicians, educators, counselors combined autism and intellectual capabilities. So Rain Man had to be institutionalized, right? He didn't have the capacity to live independently. He lived in an institution. And so last century, we kind of conflated those things that autism meant certain behaviors, it meant low IQ, it meant that a
Mhm.
person, wouldn't be able to live independently. And in fact, when they didn't really know that much, that was a time period where if you had a child with any kind of special needs, usually the child was taken from you and put into an institution.
Mhm.
Sometimes the parents had a
Mhm.
say, sometimes the parents did not have a say.
Mhm.
So, as the institutionalization of America died down and more people wanted to keep their children at home, and we
Mhm.
had less and less institutions and asylums, we started to see that autism and intellect are really two different things, and that there was a whole generation of people who have the autistic behaviors, but can also actually be exceptional, gifted, bright.
Mhm.
So, a kind of a popular figure, people love him or hate him, is Elon Musk. So, Elon
Mhm.
Musk, I think most people would not argue that he's a very successful businessman. He's a little quirky. Some people like his politics,
Mhm.
some people don't. Some people like how forward and direct that he is, some people don't. But he is an example of what we used to have called Asperger's, or now autism
Mm.
level
Oh,
1.
okay. Oh, that's interesting. Didn't know that. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's is do you have any kind of feelings about how you felt like how what causes it, or is that it, like can you share that'd be helpful for parents to kind of know that
Yeah,
side
we
of
talk
it?
about the old theories. The old theories, back in the Dr. Spock days in the 1950s and 60s, poor mom got blamed for everything. Every malady or mental health issue that a child had was blamed on an old theory called the refrigerator mother, meaning mom is cold, aloof, she's not a good nurturer, she's not a good
Oh,
carer. So if the children had anything, it was mom's fault because she was a bad mom. Um, from that,
wow.
thank goodness, several
Yeah.
decades ago, but some people still that lingers in their
Oh,
mind. But,
that's bad.
with
Yeah.
autism, what we know now is there's no one specific cause for autism, but what we do know is there was a huge study back in 2016, through a journal called JAMA, JAMA, and it had 2.1 million participants, which is a really big participation for a
Yeah.
survey. So, with 2.1 million people across 5 countries, and then also it was longitudinal, meaning the study took place over many years. And what they found was there is some form of hereditary or genetic factor for what we would call autism level 1, autism without any form of cognitive impairment. Once you find someone on the spectrum in your family, more than likely, if you go up your family tree, you're going to find several other people who would have not been diagnosed, but maybe they
Mm.
were
Oh, okay. Yeah.
scientists or
Yeah.
engineers or
Oh, okay.
teachers or professors.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
Even in the
wow.
arts, we have
Yeah.
people in the arts who also contribute to. Hans Asperger's was a famous researcher, and one of his lines is to make advances in art and math, a little dash of autism is a requirement. So we have a lot of people, there are a
Yeah.
lot of famous actors and singers who are on the spectrum, as well as people like Elon Musk and business
Yeah.
people in the STEM sciences, maths, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I was gonna say they can really excel in those areas.
Yes.
Right. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, we've known, a young guy that was just really good computer stuff and all of that, just so, uh and math. Oh, wow, he was a whiz at a very young age, a very, intelligent in that yeah, isn't that neat?
It is. So sometimes the struggles,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
for the little kids, might be what we would call behavior, but it's really their central nervous system is dysregulated. Some might really struggle if they have strong sensory needs and preferences of certain sounds or colors or lights.
yeah,
It's like they feel it really deeply and they're really affected by it. They're not trying to be mean, they're not trying to cause a problem, they're not trying to get attention. But for those kids who really say are sound sensitive, that it's almost like they're experiencing it like pain, not that
mhm,
they're just being complaining and hard to get along. So there might be struggles there. There can as they get older, some of the struggles are more in social relationships, being in relationship with their peers, being in relationship with marriage, maintaining
mhm,
relationships,
mhm.
knowing what to do in social situations. Those might be some of the struggles.
Oh, okay, and things like that, yeah. Oh, wow. So, what are some of the things that you might would like to share that could just really give, like, hope and encouragement, to parents of this or in marriages and,
Yeah.
in that
So the
way?
first thing I'd like to say is I'd really love to break the stigma, and especially in the Christian community. I am a Christian, so I'm of the same
Yeah,
community. But
yeah.
sometimes we want to shy away from labels and diagnoses. We as
Mhm,
Christians sometimes stigmatize people who carry a label as ADHD or dyslexic or autistic. And I think what we can do as a faith community is to normalize that there are different brain types and neurologies and that God created different neurologies for different
mhm,
reasons. The father of modern computers was on the spectrum, right? We would not have computers if we did not have people on the spectrum. So I
mhm,
think what we
mhm.
can
That's
do
cool.
is lessen that bias. And then two, as a parent, whether you choose to home educate or put your children in school, it's
Mhm,
important to kind of follow along the developmental stages of your children. So one of the primary things with kids on the spectrum is they're not just late bloomers. They're about 3 to 5 years behind their peers in some big milestones, especially like around puberty. They're not really interested in the opposite sex yet, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
mhm, mhm,
if they don't know that they're on the spectrum, there can be problems on why they think that they're not
mm,
attracted to the opposite
mhm,
sex
mhm,
around
mhm,
puberty. So
mhm.
knowing, helping kids understand who they are, and then getting them treatment, support,
Okay.
services, and helping them
Yeah,
learn skills. The younger, the better. That will set
okay.
them up when they are transitioning and then leaving their home for whatever God has them to do, after they finish high school.
Oh, wow. You can see that, yeah, to really help them to understand too. So not only does parents need to kinda understand what their child's gonna be what's gonna be going on in their mind or, for their learning and different things and how it's gonna affect them, but, so they can understand the children, but for the children can understand themselves and can know kind of what's going on and better equip themselves in
Yeah.
ways
So
and,
they learn to
um
advocate for what they need as
yeah.
well.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So even though they can see, oh, they may look different than other children their age, they don't have to see it as a bad thing or anything, that they can
Right. And
work at
and
their own
because there are
pace.
ways when with my daughter coming through high school and college, I would always say, whatever you set your mind to that you want to do, you set that goal. It might look different than your peers. It might take you
Yeah.
longer. It might take you
Yeah.
shorter. You might have to do it in different steps. But we're
Yeah.
going to figure out how this works for you so that you reach your potential and get to do, what you want to do. And so while this
Yeah.
was 20 years ago, some people say, well, what about the rest
Okay.
of the story? And so that daughter who is on the autism spectrum just got
Yeah.
married in June and lives
Aw.
halfway across the country. And so
Yeah.
with her
Oh,
husband and
wow.
two cat fur babies, work full
Okay.
time. And yeah, so it's just all about having the right
Oh,
support
yeah. Yeah. It
and
sounds like
support from family.
good support. Yeah. And then someone like you, yeah, being able to come alongside families and give them, yeah, that support in that way. Oh, wow. Okay. There's something I just I thought of, but yeah. Oh wow. Is Do you have something else in that way that you could share? There's something I wanted to ask you and it slipped me.
Come to you. It'll come back while we're
Yeah.
talking. I think
Yeah.
one thing I'd love to share
Yeah.
with your listeners is last year we really felt called as a family to kind of put our story together in a book. And so, what makes our
Okay.
book unique is it's got mom's perspective, dad's perspective, my daughter Sydney, who is
Yeah.
on the autism spectrum, and then
Yeah.
my other daughter Erica is ADHD. And so she writes from a sibling's perspective. We put our book together kind of in a story form, but also at the end of each chapter, spiritual reflections, place to stop and rest. For me on my journey, wondering like, God, I had a plan for my life and you changed my whole
Mhm.
plan. I
Mhm.
really had to learn to
Yeah.
focus on who God is and the different names and
Oh,
characteristics
wow.
of God was something
Yeah.
really important to me that we incorporated into the book. And then at the end of the book, there's some articles, some guides, some tips, and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And it makes a difference. A is the only book out there that's about autism, faith, and family, and it's
Oh,
written from
wow.
all four of our perspectives,
Yeah.
that we would love to share with other people of faith who maybe want to know a little bit more about autism, have somebody with autism in their
Oh,
family, or want to better understand someone's journey.
okay. Wow, that does sound good. That's what I was going to ask, kind of who can benefit from this. Um,
Yeah. Well, we
so
also feel
basically,
like churches and church leadership can also
mhm,
benefit from it. If you don't really understand, we decided to be completely open and candid about our story. So
mhm,
we're telling the good,
mhm,
bad, the ugly, the honest,
mhm,
the things we did well, the things we didn't do well.
mhm,
And if you really want to understand the stressors and behind the scenes,
mhm,
and maybe how as a church you can support this family as in the Christian community, how you can
mhm.
support this family. We feel like it's a book for coaches, for counselors, for clergy, for families. If you want to learn more about autism and how to support
Yeah.
people and
Yeah.
families, we really wrote that with that thought in mind.
Oh, wow. So maybe with for families with younger children with autism or with older, it doesn't really make a
We feel like it would be
difference.
beneficial for all. So we kind of start our story from the diagnosis day, the things that we were noticing, how we put the pieces together, and I really focus on Sydney's elementary years, and then she picks up her own story for middle school and high school.
Yeah.
Talks about some of the mental health factors,
Okay.
especially
Yeah.
some of the churches that we went to that did not accept her for who she is. It caused mental health
Oh,
issues. She had
oh,
suicidal ideation.
oh, that's
Um,
sad.
Things that happen in middle school, how middle school and high school kids
Yeah.
treat people that are different,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
terrible. And
Yeah.
then how siblings are impacted when there is another child in the family. There's not a typical sibling relationship. They didn't have a quote
Mm,
normal
yeah.
sister to sister relationship, and so they had to talk about how they had to build their relationship differently with
Mhm,
their different neurotypes. So we feel like it covers
mhm.
a lot of ground, and we really wanted it to be a very wide range of readers that would get something from it.
That would benefit. Yeah, it sounds like to help to better understand. Uh, yeah. Oh wow. I like that. Yeah. Um, I don't really know what other questions to kind of ask you in that way to help bring out more that you have for families. I'm like, when I don't know that myself, then I'm kind of like, oh, but I think they can feel alone. So this could help them feel that they're not alone in this situation, and that there is a big support group out there. Do you have like other groups things you can be part of? I bet there's Facebook groups too, right? Do you have?
So my Facebook group usually focuses on women who are married to someone on the autism spectrum, but so I have two websites. On one website called ChristianNeuroDiverseMarriage.com, there's a space called group coaching. And so I've built a network with some other coaches since I primarily don't work with parents anymore. One of my coaches, or that's a couple, Jeremy and Charity, they're a couple with two children on the spectrum. They're also believers, also trained in coaching. And so they might have parenting groups that are available if you're wanting to connect with other parents. Different groups for connecting men with other men, women with other women. And so that is actually our tagline for our podcast is you're not alone on your journey, because we hone into Jeremiah 29:11 that there is a hope and a plan for your future, and that God does not mean to harm you, but to prosper you. And
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
life might be challenging,
Yeah.
because you have autism as part of your family system, that I always say there's no exclusion clause. God didn't say, well, sorry, y'all have autism in your family. You have no calling or purpose now. There's
Mhm.
always hope for your future,
Yeah.
and definitely everything that we do in our kind of ministry and our coaching practice is we want you not to feel isolated. We want you to know we created our own podcast, specifically all autism all the time for marriage and family, that you can connect. We had no idea like it would grow as it did. It grew to 40 countries and $175,000 downloads. And that tells us there's a lot of marriage and families throughout the world that have this same challenge. And that's usually what some will say is when I found your podcast or when I found you on that YouTube, I suddenly didn't feel alone, and not feeling alone can change everything.
Yeah. Gave them hope. Yeah. So you do have your own podcast.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Oh, so what is the name of that? Where could they find that? Oh, and I can put links in the description too. But yeah, what is it called?
Yeah, so the big name of it is NeuroDiverse Christian Couples, but we also will have some of our segments by Autism Spectrum Resources for Marriage and Family. So sometimes we're talking about family things, sometimes we're talking about adults on the spectrum, sometimes we're talking to researchers, sometimes we're talking to pastors or ministers or churches who have really figured out a way to be inclusive for children and families that are impacted by the spectrum. So it really kind of depends what you're looking for, and people will reach out and suggest a topic. And if I can make it happen or get somebody on my show, then I'll make it
Mhm.
happen. But we really want to cover as much as possible, especially when you're just starting out and you're learning about this, and you want to have your faith considered. That's really important. We call ourselves Autism, Faith, and Marriage because we want to put all three of those components together.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, because they definitely go together. Yeah. Oh, I think that the question I thought of earlier was, is there things that you feel can I help with autism? As in, like, I know someone that uses really into essential oils, and has felt that they've used that um, for their child, and just well, instead of other medicines, like for certain things. But have you heard of things like that that can
Yeah,
really
so
be
there's a
helpful?
lot of different, depending on what is the skill that the child needs or how dysregulated that the child becomes. So aromatherapy, which essential oils might be one of those. There's something called hippotherapy, which is horse therapy, being outdoors in nature and working with horses. A big thing can be occupational therapy, which if your child is struggling with like basic coordination or hand movements or sensory kind of issues, needing to get like won't wear clothes, won't put a shirt on, won't put socks on, an occupational therapist has treatments and strategies to help lessen the central nervous system's reaction to because you have to learn how to wear clothes. You have to go into public and you have to wear clothes. Now, you as a parent can be sensitive and you can certainly hear what your child would like to wear. And autistic kids have strong preferences. But the option is you don't get the option of no pants. So, like, if that's a struggle, you're going to need maybe an occupational therapist to help the child learn to keep their pants on in public. Because when you're 18, that's called a felony and that's breaking the law. So, got to keep those pants on
Yeah.
in the public. Um, Physical therapists can also help with various things with walking. There's speech therapy if there's stuttering or not being able to form
Yeah.
words or
Yeah.
social language. So there's a bunch of different things kind of depending on what that specific child needs, where are some of their challenges, and what are the skills that they need to learn. There's a lot of things that
Yeah.
are helpful outside of
Oh, okay.
medication.
Yeah. Okay. And a lot of helps available probably in a lot of different and communities would have yeah, these helps in place. Even with like with this in this school system, like does the schools have then the extra help like that?
Yeah, so sadly, a lot of private and Christian schools do not. But in the
Oh,
public
okay.
education system, which if I would have had my choice, I would have been able
Yeah,
to have my child in a Christian or private
yeah.
school, but she did not get the help and support that she needed there. So in the public realm, if a child is struggling with their academics or socially at school and they get an autism diagnosis, or the teacher or an educator realizes that there's something kind of a little different developmentally as this child, in the public school system, there's two ways of getting help. One is called a 504 plan, and one is called an individualized education plan. And if you move into that as a parent, it's really important. And this might also be why you might want to grab my book, as you need to know how to
Yeah.
navigate
Okay.
those meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your rights? What are your child's rights? Because you enter into like negotiations with the public school system to try to get the help and support. They want to give you the least amount of possible, and you want the most
Okay.
amount as
Yeah.
possible, and you're going to have to probably meet somewhere
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the middle. So there are far more supports out there than there were 20 years ago. We kind of felt like we were pioneering and trailblazing 20 years ago, but thankfully, in general, knowledge for
Yeah.
autism has increased. The public school system's doing a little bit better of a job, and we as a church community, we need to do a lot better of a job in inclusivity, I think.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it's came this far. I'm glad there is all of this support, and that it is much needed. Um, yeah, I enjoy what you've shared here about it, and just the help that you're doing for these parents, and understanding they know that you've been through it, and you know what you're talking about, can give that compassion and that support and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that you've given me this time to talk to your listeners, to talk to your
Yeah.
families, and I hope, listener out there, that you've heard something. And if you're thinking about it or you're wondering about that, look it up. Look up autism. Look up our book and find the resources and support. That's what you need. You need resources and
Yeah.
support. Don't give up hope.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was gonna ask, is there any last things that you kind of want to share um, with our audience here?
I think we've kind of covered the
And if
basics
you
pretty
did-
well.
Good, good. Yeah, I hope I've been a good host, and this one being, I'm not, know about autism, but I know a lot of families that do, and it's just a very real thing, and so we need that support. So I just thank you for what you're doing and what you're sharing here, and in your book, I definitely encourage everyone to get that book and to to get that more support that they need. So, all right, I'll have all that in the description. So, just thank you again, Stephanie, for coming on and sharing this with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, okay. Okay. Thanks. Take care.